Archie 629. After the comic wastes our time with a recap page and some shock value panels where Archie's a mindless member of the brainwashed people army, some of the army gets zapped and fall over because Sabrina shows up. Then Kiss shows up again, and once again, one of them is written to act like a condescending jerk. Why did the writer think Kiss would want to be portrayed so negatively? Betty gets upset and thinks they're hurting Archie, and Sabrina has the good sense to know it's a good thing before even talking with them first. And Archie goes back to normal. Making me wonder why Kiss didn't restore the mindless zombies around him in the previous issue on site. They just had so little magic, even though they can overcome gravity. So it was kind of pointless of Archie to become one of the mindless zombies if it was only going to be used for a cliffhanger ending, and then a few pages where he does nothing. It's bad enough it was for shock value, but that's all it was for. Jughead asks him if he's okay calling him Buddy. Archie says he was fighting those monsters earlier. I don't like that he calls them monsters when they're just brainwashed humans. The group Kiss explains that Archie could return to being brainwashed unless the Dynasty Amulet gets destroyed, which holds all of the monsters as power and lets him do this to everyone. Kiss re-explains what they want to do, and I guess it's an amusing joke that Archie says he might be lame forever, and Jughead chooses now to snark, "Let's work on the problems we can solve." Kiss says the amulet harnesses people's energies, then all it would do is kill people from draining their electricity. One of the members of Kiss says a lot of places would give their right arm for a little fun, and says it can only temporarily rock the crazy out of these brainwashed people. Salem snarks that Riverdale's already lame and boring. This is a little much because he doesn't explain himself and everyone ignores this. Does this writer like the Archie series? If not, well, based on the reason I can think of for not liking it, that could be why this whole zombie arc thing was written, because the writer finds the series boring as it is. But then the comic shouldn't hire a writer like that. It should hire one that appreciates the series and wants to improve it for what it is. Also, if he's talking in front of everyone, why does nobody question it? Why did he even choose not to talk in front of Archie if Archie knew he could talk? How dumb does the writer think we are to not immediately assume that this guy can hear Salem talk, and therefore assume instead that Archie can't? Well, I'm looking forward to all the other lines Salem's gonna have in this story arc. Jughead has some forced dialogue where he insults Kiss despite them clearly being helpful, and naturally lampshades the fact that Kiss came from the same portal as the monsters. Then one of the band members uses an instrument and says a traditional spell, and Archie and his friends sit on a flying giant symbol to get shown people doing nothing but typing on their phones looking mad. How can Jughead tell that the food looks boring from all the way up here? How does anyone call this cool? Then energy surrounds the flying thing and starts falling, and somehow Sabrina the witch just says, "Hold on, guys," and it crashes, even though she could have obviously used magic to slow its fall or teleport her and her friends to the ground. I don't understand how any writer could forget her abilities so much most of the time. Anyone can just look at her and instantly know in any situation how her powers could help. She should have been trapped in the cage until the very end of the arc, because for the most part all her being free does is make the story make less sense. Jughead asks one of the members if this is when they wave their guitar and go home, but somehow he says that trick isn't easy, and instead they have to fight. Reggie and Veronica are back in school with the normal acting guy behind them, and Reggie clearly hopes Archie became one of the drooling clods and sees a note on the locker as Veronica's worried about her friends. It's a flyer for a carnival, which suspiciously invites everyone in Riverdale to attend, and is suspiciously on a locker. Even she knows it's a trap. Reggie is impossibly stupid by not believing her. Isn't this supposed to be an evil genius? She asks to tell him that the town never hosted a free carnival, and warns him about the monsters' plan. She lampshades that Reggie's acting even weirder than usual. Then don't write Reggie to be an idiot if you know about it. She looks behind her for no reason and sees the monsters. The mummy has annoying dialogue trying to ruin the tense mood, and so does the vampire. Veronica says wow and asks the monster where he got the amulet. He gets an idiot ball and brags about how people always notice his amulet in any dimension he goes to, when obviously they would because they can see it. This was a clever plan to get him distracted before running away. Somehow the brainwashed people don't attack, and all of the time the members of KISS are talking with Jughead and doing nothing. And if the writer wrote Jughead to say, "We get it," that means he knows it's repetitive that KISS keeps saying that this is what's gonna happen to the town. So there's no excuse for all of the repetition of exposition. The more times your characters keep explaining the same things, the less emotional punch they pack. I got it after the first time, and I take it less seriously every time it's repeated. KISS has no reason to re-explain what the monsters want. Sabrina fires a beam at one person, insulting the audience's intelligence because not only does the beam not work as crowd control somehow, but she reminds them that she's a teenager, which clearly doesn't explain her incompetence. Anyone would be able to use their visualization skills to make a crowd harmless. And her not paying attention in charm class does not justify it. And I'm offended at the words charm class being mentioned. How could the writer continue that stupid, universally hated, waste of time plot point? I thought her having a headband and short hair was meant to be a return to form. Why would they know they have to do that, but not know anything else that we liked about the 70s series? She reads a spell, and Reggie has forced dumb dialogue, asking Veronica if she'll still find him cute as a zombie, at a time like this. Somehow the vampire asks why Reggie's making fun of the werewolf when it's obvious he deserves it and is just trying to cope. At least it's explained why they weren't instantly brainwashed. Because they're asked where KISS and their friends are. So they need to keep them this way to get information. Then they hear music from a radio, and Veronica calls this guy I don't recognize by his full name, implying he's a celebrity cameo out of nowhere. And he says he's sorry it took him so long and calls them guys as if they already knew him. I don't know who he is. I can't take this seriously. Conveniently, the rock music makes everyone around them stay still, and he asks where they can go. Veronica says her house is down the street, and they go inside, and it turns out Archie and his friends are jumping and running towards the brainwashed people looking brave. One of the members of KISS says that they aren't hopeless after all, but somehow the story ends with the monsters acting triumphant, and Archie's friends on the ground in a different location with Sabrina nowhere in sight, when it's instantly obvious her magic and Salem's magic and KISS's magic would make this an impossible scenario. When they can freeze time for one thing, or at the very least, point and warp all of these people away, or freeze them in time, trap them in ice, or have them restrained with rope. I hate cliffhangers. I wish modern comics were episodic, so I'd never see one again. This issue by Alex Segra is about Archie instantly being returned to normal by KISS's magical instruments, so that they could have not written him to be separated from his friends at all, and him and his friends wandering around, flying on object, and eventually fighting brainwashed zombies in front of Ronnie's house, just for them to somehow lose. I can't understand why Sabrina and Salem never so much as tried using magic to instantly return all of these people to normal. At which point it could be explained that the amulet's power is too strong for its spell to be undone. But that can't be it, KISS is far less magically capable than witches. And yet even KISS's instruments can undo the spell for one person. I guess if they lost at the end, they can't do that for a crowd. This was an annoying and boring issue where not much happens, just characters talking and repeating the exposition that the town is in danger of always being like this. And the more I keep having a character say something, the less I take it seriously. Archie 630. I'm supposed to believe the ridiculous notion that some omnipotent witches failed to defeat the monsters and somehow managed to go from in front of Veronica's house to a mountain for no reason. With the comic conveniently cutting past their whole fight with these monsters because there's no way to write that believably, as it's not explained exactly what powers the monsters have. So I assume they don't have any of the powers that would be instant win abilities. Veronica's an idiot, and Dilton wonders why the Archie gang wasn't brainwashed. A member of KISS explains that Sabrina had cast a spell, fooling the brainwashed people into thinking they're one of them. Then because work of fiction drama, Kiss decides that the Archie gang aren't necessary anymore, even though all of them combined couldn't stop the monsters, and so obviously Kiss has even less of a chance of winning solo. Sabrina says she needs the band's help even though she's omnipotent, because the monsters have an amulet. She shouldn't be in this arc if she's not gonna do anything. I'm supposed to believe a mummy broke her nail somehow, when her fingers are wrapped in bandages. And somehow the vampire still wants to work for the monsters, even though he says it'll be all sad when they succeed, and he looks sad about it. I was wondering last issue if he's like this to make fun of Edward Cullen, but I don't think Edward Cullen ever wanted to drain all of the fun out of a town. So this is no excuse to make him like this. Archie's gang heads for the carnival, pretending to be brainwashed, and then Kiss shows up at the carnival playing the one song even I know them for. But this just bores me because it wastes too much comic space without plot progression. And the comic's so arrogant that it thinks this is an awesome tribute to a band that was portrayed as nothing but jerks who were too stupid to instantly magic away the monsters until now somehow. But one song is supposed to make up for everything. So Kiss gets approached by the monsters, one of them gets hit by a guitar, and somehow one of them instantly assumes they're doomed even though they were able to fly and fire magic beams out of their hands in the gym, looking like they were just as competent as the monsters. But now they're not even trying to fight back and are lying on the ground for no reason. What a lame story. Dilton has a plan, but it's too little too late to acknowledge that he's smart now. Somehow I'm supposed to buy that people that can fire magic out of their hands and fly ended up put in a jail cell by their old enemies. I guess I have to assume these cages can't be magically broken out of. The story drags out for no reason, being incredibly boring. Eventually, Archie and his gang start playing music and singing, finally acknowledging that they're a band too. It would have made sense that they were needed to resolve the plot, except Sabrina is not trapped in a cage right now. Dilton cuts the power to the carnival, and somehow that opens the cage door for each member of Kiss when obviously the doors would just stay closed. And how would cutting the electricity make it so that there's no longer a spell on the cages to keep the members from using magic to bust out? So there's no way this could make sense. Obviously Sabrina could have solved this whole conflict herself. You'd think if young Salem could use magic to make a magic pendant move, she could do the same thing and move the amulets to a volcano. So the music snaps people out of it. Archie hits one of the monsters. And then we see regular humans wearing the same clothes as the monsters. Jughead reveals that the monsters used to be regular humans. And the comic shows no respect for logic and good writing because it's somehow too lazy to explain how they got turned into monsters. Yeah, like it's totally normal that humans could randomly turn into monsters like this. Let's not explain it. This is incredibly underwhelming. You have the audience wanting them destroyed for the entire arc, and that's the resolution? Like, you thought we would sympathize with them, so they shouldn't get any punishment at the end? This is very underwhelming. I feel like they weren't even defeated. I'd rather see them get a bunch of cartoon slapstick where I see them get hit a lot. It's like it's only a twist for the sake of a twist, because nobody would expect this. They would be looking forward to the monsters getting sent back to where they came from at least. Then a portal shows up, and it's not explained how it knew to show up, or how a person knew to summon it. I have to assume someone magical was spying on Kiss the whole time, waiting for them to be done. But why didn't they do anything to help them until now? That wizard could have summoned a portal when they were trapped in cages, and closed it over the bars of the cage to free them. Jughead admits he was wrong about these guys. A member of Kiss thanks Archie and compliments him for fighting honorably. He barely fought at all though. I guess the last page is non-canon. How is Veronica happy about it? This issue by Alex Segura was an incredibly boring, dragged out one, where after the issue skips to some omnipotent witches losing a fight with monsters because there's no way to write that believably, which is a narrative cheat. Somehow, after Kids' supposedly awesome song moment, they just lie there and do nothing to fight back against the monsters they were effortlessly firing beams of magic at before. So that's incredibly lame. They somehow get kidnapped, despite their powers. And Dilton gets a plan to have the Archies rock out and somehow undo the brainwashing with non-magical instruments. Then somehow is cutting the power to the carnival magically forces open the cages of the bandmates, which you think would require giving energy. The only good part of the issue was Archie kicking one of the monsters, because how can an omnipotent goddess like Sabrina just do nothing the whole time, when she could have solved this whole conflict herself? She could have just magicked the amulet away. And if that sounds underwhelming, one, that's exactly why dramatic arcs have no business in the Sabrina series, and two, it was already very underwhelming that the monsters somehow turned out to be humans all along, for no reason, and we didn't even see them get a ton of satisfying slapstick beforehand. This comic's so arrogant that it thinks it was an awesome conclusion instead of just confusing, just because Kiss played its famous song. But they let themselves get taken out without a fight, so wouldn't they be embarrassed if they read that? This arc is just confusing and disrespectful to Sabrina. Archie Double Digest 226. Sabrina says she just speaks to Pine, which is especially impressive because she's a kid in this issue. Zelda gets panicked, and Sabrina says that's supposed to be her favorite pie, and Hilda says that Zelda's been on a diet, which is one bother with diets. If she ever felt insecure about her weight, she would have zapped it away. She starts floating with no zap sound effects drawn, and there's no explanation for why the pie suddenly springs into her face. I just have to assume Sabrina made it do that so that she wouldn't cheat on her diet, but I feel like that'd be out of character, so that can't be the story's intention. And Hilda somehow expects me to believe Zelda still hasn't eaten a bite of the pie, when this is the same woman who wrestled with her so she could get to eat some cake. So if they're still allowed to have little Sabrina-style stories, why couldn't all of the previous stories been like that?